5 minutes. I'm going to try and do chapter 6 to 10. So after the 2017 election, roughly a year after the referendum itself, talks with the EU began in earnest. That's when Gavin joined number 10, and his own excellent book emphasises that it was only really then that key dilemmas, particularly over Northern Ireland, began to be recognised. Meanwhile, Parliament was more polarised than ever. On the Labour side, many began hoping Brexit might be overturned via a second referendum, while others were in favour of a soft Brexit. Some hardline Conservatives were energised by Theresa May's rhetoric about the threat of no deal, while many other Conservatives increasingly feared it. Various backbench groups developed both within and between parties to press for different outcomes. In July 2018, Conservative splits came right into the open when David Davis and Boris Johnson resigned from the Cabinet over May's Chequers proposals. When the deal was agreed with the EU that November, Dominic Raab, Davis's successor as Brexit Secretary, and 3 other ministers resigned. This made it seem obvious that the House of Commons wouldn't support the deal. But it had to be consulted thanks to Dominic Grieve's amendment to the EU withdrawal bill to require a so-called meaningful vote. Grieve's move was motivated by desire to avoid a no-deal Brexit, but ironically it provided a vehicle for the hardline Brexiteers to block the deal. When debate began on the deal, the first Conservative backbencher on his feet was Boris Johnson, as we just saw in the video. On that first day of debate, 6 of the 12 Conservative speakers opposed the deal. The next day, 13 out of 19 did so. The vote was pulled and rescheduled to January, but ended with the heaviest Commons defeat on record. 118 Conservative MPs opposed the deal in this vote. Strikingly, 90 of them had been Leave supporters in 2016, while just 49 former Leavers supported the government. Former Conservative Remainers overwhelmingly backed the deal by 144 to 26. May naturally attacked the opposition for not supporting her deal, but Labour had its own splits and no desire to expose them by backing the Prime Minister in a fight not of its making. The key place for government to look for support was on its own backbenches, and particularly from Leave supporters. But that's exactly what was missing. This pattern repeated in 2 further votes on the deal in March. By the end, there were 34 Conservatives holding out, dominated by the 28 ERG Spartans. If they and the DUP had supported the deal, it would have passed. One of the biggest problems we identify in the book is that May never spoke up about the problem created by her own internal hardline opponents. After the second defeat, her ill-judged "I am on your side" speech from Downing Street instead blamed a generalised Parliament for blocking the deal. At that point, the Brexit-supporting newspapers would have backed her against the hardliners. They'd noticed what was going on. In response to the second defeat, The Sun suggested that Tory Brexiteers who rejected the deal have lost the plot, while the Daily Mail proclaimed that these Tory wreckers will not be forgiven. But May didn't capitalise on this. Her instinct seemed always to be holding her party together at all costs, even when elements of it were undermining her. This served her badly and resulted in our institutions getting blamed. Ironically, Boris Johnson, having voted twice against her deal, denounced May's Downing Street words, suggesting that it is wrong in every sense to blame MPs for blocking Brexit. Of course, he'd later be elected on a manifesto that did exactly that. Her words, sadly, also helped to feed the idea of proroguing Parliament. On May's watch, Conservative MPs were often central to attempts to find alternative solutions. The Brady Amendment, which Graham might discuss, achieved a temporary truce in the party, but unfortunately to no lasting effect. Twice, Caroline Spellman successfully proposed amendments allowing MPs to express their collective opposition to no deal. Oliver Letwin led attempts to get other Brexit options debated. Both of them had consistently supported May's deal. When Letwin's intervention facilitated the so-called indicative votes, the 2 key soft Brexit proposals also came from Conservatives who'd supported May's deal, Ken Clarke and Nick Bowles. When those votes failed, criticism again pointed to former Remainers on the opposition benches for being fragmented. But the far greater factor was that only 30-something Conservatives voted with Clarke or Bowles. Others on the platform may explain this, but again, it seemed that holding the party together and protecting Theresa May got in the way of actually finding a solution. When Johnson took over, that abruptly ended. We saw the prorogation and the stripping of the whip from 21 Conservatives who supported fresh moves to block no deal. Johnson's cabinet contained various figures who'd repeatedly opposed May's deal. In contrast, most of those he expelled had supported it. Johnson's key success, where May had failed, was bringing the ERG hardliners on board for his deal. But as we discuss in the book, it seems he only did so by promising privately he'd renege on the Northern Ireland Protocol afterwards. This is, of course, before he went on to sell the deal to the public as oven-ready, and on a manifesto that blamed MPs for thwarting the democratic decision of the British people. So summing up, we set out to write a book about Parliament and Brexit, a story ostensibly which appeared to be about a clash between institutions, Parliament, government and the courts. But in fact, we conclude, Brexit was above all else a battle inside the Conservative Party, for which Parliament all too often got the blame.
Thank you very much, both of you. I should just say the book is